we'll go ahead and we'll go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off as well too. The foul heard around the world. Caitlin Clark on Angel Reese. We see the foul from Angel Reese at first, and then afterwards, Caitlin Clark goes in, get a little bit of a hack on Angel Reese as she goes up. The flop, the end of it. The foul heard around the world that is transcended into wives and kids and everything in between. But I'm just going to talk strictly basketball for this one now that we got a chance to take a peek at it. Hard foul, not a huge deal. Maybe a touch extra little ugh at the end of it, but a little bit of an overreaction. Some people overreact when they hit the ground, they get fouled. She didn't see it, obviously. We see it from a bird's eye view. Angel Reese just knows she was going up. She was wrapped up and fell on the ground. It probably felt like a tackle. Immediately gets mad. We move on from it. Literally, the fact that we're even talking about this again is just outrageously hilarious in all the worst ways. So it's not a huge deal. It's a foul. That's about the extent of it. Not even really flagrant. The fact everything that's come out after it has just been absolutely insanity. The follow-ups to saying that, how do I wanna word this? Saying that Caitlyn is racist for fouling her was a little bit dramatic when you consider the situation. We've seen the commentators of Ryan Clark, RG3, etcetera, have gone on a very, very wild tangent out of this one too.
This
that's
one's
a
gotten
s
in some depths.
like, that's a spider web of its own tomfoolery right there. Like, that's some soap opera stuff right there. Like, that days of our lives as former ESPN and current ESPN commentators going well off the rails. Even on this one, they have not even really talked. Caitlyn and Angel barely talked about it since. There has been obviously the rumor about potentially fans saying things they shouldn't be saying in a very racially inappropriate terms. If that is the case, WNBA, do what you do. Fine them, suspend them, send them to the gulag, ban them, whatever you got it, whatever you do. Everyone supports that. That's humanly understandable if you figure that out. Everything else is just very, very dramatic. The fans are going to yell at their teams. I've just asked anybody who's played in the Boston Garden or in Salt Lake City, some of the things I guess said there. That is the unfortunate nature of the business. But I'm just gonna say I think this should have been just a foul and under the bridge, but unfortunately dramatics and on top of more dramatics. And it shows the amount of star power Caitlin Clark especially has, as well as Angel Reese, who has built her own following as well. Basically, people who hate Caitlin Clark like Angel Reese and vice versa. It's very, very unique how they're built out, considering they're both very vastly different players on vastly different tiers, even though they're both awesome, if that makes sense. Angel's a rebounding double-double machine. Think Draymond Green-esque Andre Drummond, like just absolutely menace on the boards and constant putbacks. Sometimes her own putbacks. That's another story. Caitlin Clark she has 9, 20, and 10 games in her career, second most in WNBA history. Like for a career, not just like she already has these most career 20 and 10 games, or second most. The most is 10. And she's done in like 40 games compared to, I think it's 268. So we're comparing very different tiers here. And the fact that it's turned into such a crazy follow up outside of basketball is just wild to me. When anyone who's played on a basketball court knows a foul, if it's somebody you don't necessarily like, you get a little pissed. Or in this case, where it's a team that you kind of have a rivalry with, Indiana and Chicago are not that far apart. Indianapolis and Chicago, you can get there in a day pretty comfortably. There's a little bit of an innate rivalry there. Plus, everything else going back to college on top of it. Overreaction to a foul you didn't like, moved on. Did we even hear from? Did they get into another scuffle the rest of the game? No.
Nope.
Was there another issue? No. All that happened was the fever went ballistic, and that was the end of the game. It's not like this was consistent tension. It was. If SGA got hit like that, then there'd be a lot more. Then it'd be a little bit more complaints. But it wasn't really that much farther off. Like I think this was. You know what? Your turn. I've rambled enough, but from a basketball perspective, this was it's asinine. Ass a 10, ass 11, ass a 37.5.
Yeah, let's provide a little context behind this, right? 20-point deficit at the time. Fever were running away with this. We saw the video. Angel Reese shoves Leah Boston first. That shove had more force in it than anything we saw after that. But doesn't matter because two wrongs don't make a right. That wasn't the foul that was called. Caitlin, obviously seeing that, sees the situation, and she's like, well, I'm not going to give her an easy basket. And she slaps down on the ball while grabbing behind on the back hip, which you're taught to do because it protects the player that you're slapping.
Grab both arms so they can't get an and one, too.
They're not going to get the and one up. They're not going to get it up. Now, I'll go back to what I said with SGA. In today's day and age, flopping is part of the game. You feel a hand on your back hip, coaches teach players, male and female, to fall dramatically. Not saying it wasn't a foul. It was a foul.
Clearly.
Flagrant, I have questions about a flagrant foul. I'm also
Flagrantly
raised in
obvious,
the
maybe,
90s to
but
2000 era where basketball was different.
you ain't believe you
Centers,
ain't trying.
yeah, centers, forwards, you come
Or-
out with cuts. I have scars on my arms from cuts that came up in a game that in today's day and age, I would have been on a free throw line 30 some odd times. People would call me a foul merchant. Like this is, and I sucked at basketball, by the way. But this is a situation where you look at, from a purely basketball standpoint, there's frustrations from Angel Reese. You're down by 20. You end up losing this game by nearly 40 points. Your team doesn't even score over 60. This is a woman who has done nothing but win in her collegiate career. And outside of her rookie year in the W, she's won still. And by the way, they didn't have a bad year last year, Chicago. They weren't picking first overall. Think about that for a second. So Angel Reese is showing frustration. I don't blame her for a hard foul and getting up and wanting to have some words because my mind, you're up by 20. Why are you fouling me like that? Let me get this one. Like, why are you doing that? Like, you could have hurt me. Keeping the flap out of it, whatever. It doesn't take away from the fact that from the moment of the foul, Caitlin Clark walks away. She doesn't care. Like, she's like, I made the foul. I know I fouled her. I'm walking away. There was nothing demonstrative from one side, from her side. Teammates stepped in. Everything looked clean. Cool. Wash it. It's a hard foul. If you want to call a flagrant, call a flagrant. That's fine. Whatever. We'll deal with that afterwards. Why is it that this game, despite all of that, gets thrown under the microscope as it's because she's white, she gets away with that foul, or it's because she's a black girl, she's going to react? No, that's not what this is. People aren't looking at the circumstance of the game. And don't even get me started on Cheryl Swoops, you mentioned Ryan Clark, on RG3. But these are main voices. I love watching the pivot. I love listening to RG3. I love listening to Cheryl Swoops talk basketball. But you know what I don't love is I don't love turning it on and seeing all of a sudden it turns into something that it's not. This is no longer about basketball in the mainstream media. This is far beyond just basketball anymore. And both Caitlin and Angel Reese are victims of this going beyond basketball. Do they both kind of play into it in their own right? Sure. Their media teams definitely play into it. There's no doubt about it. In today's market, you have to. But in the grand scheme of it, the media is taking away the one thing these two women love to do, which is play basketball. That's what their life centers around. And every time a foul like this happens, we see a clash between these two. And these two have always been pitted against each other, going back to Iowa, Maryland, then Iowa, LSU, and now again, Indiana and Chicago. Like, these two are head-to-head constantly. So it's not a surprise that you're going to continue to see these type of flare-ups between the two, because so far Angel Reese has tended in the W has tended to get the better. Or sorry, Caitlin has tended to get the better of Angel Reese in the W. In college, it was flipped. Angel Reese had the better of Caitlin, and that's always going to be what it is. That's not going to go away. History is never going to die, but these two have put it on the court, and they keep it on the court. They haven't talked about it other than to make comments in the press game in the press conference afterwards because they're asked. They're not going out of the way to say anything. Maybe I'm wrong.
It feels like it's not them, but the people covering it are obsessed with this being like Larry and Magic, thinking like, that's what saved the NBA. Maybe this. No, that's different. You're talking a 60-year gap, 40-year gap at this point. History is kind of like poetry. It rhymes, but it doesn't repeat directly. Like they could be the two contracting superstars who met in college, then followed each other to the NBA and consistently had battles, etc. But you don't have to take everything else that was not correlated to it. Keep it strictly basketball, and you have a double-double machine, which in the WNBA is not exactly all that common. There's like her, Asia Wilson, and a couple of others here or there. And then we have Caitlin Clark, who everyone knows how amazing she is. She's already the MVP front runner.
Tied for the most triple doubles in league history, and she did it in 50 games.
Exactly. Like, we already know she's a transit. Like, she's the one. That's the downside about a fledgling sports organization that is starting on the rise. Saw it with the UFC multiple times too. People who don't have a history of sports or understanding sports, they come into it and then they immediately bring other situations into it. Like, I saw the thing about Caitlin Clark needs to be investigated for asking her to go back in the game to get her triple double. their future money depends on their stats. Like, they know if I can say, "Hey, I got these triple doubles, I get paid." That's smart. It's something to put on your it's also just fun. Like, you're like, "Okay, I'm a rebound away. Let me go get that board real quick."
They
That's
also
not it's
play
not a
with 9 and
gambling
10 people.
investigation necessary. Like, that's my
Yeah,
goal.
like they play with 9 and 10 people on the roster that are dressed. Like, come on, let's not. There's not 30 deep on a WNBA roster. It's crazy to think that.
And besides, she
Also,
comes off and goes back in to get a rebound. Like,
yeah,
that's not damaging the game. That's not suspender for gambling because her boy David Portnoy betted on it. No,
who cares?
you're forcing correlations that aren't there. That's not. We remember the joke about Steven Adams used to hold people so Russell Westbrook could get his rebounds and get his triple doubles. The jokes about that for multiple years. I say jokes, and then your face says them. What I mean about you,
I
you
mean,
get the
Steven
point.
Adams loves to hug people. Is all I'm gonna say.
And he did kind of admit sometimes he box other people outside of Russ get 3. Point is, it's
Yeah.
you're overlooking things that are common in the history of sports, but not common in this
Here's
collection sport to newer fans, which is okay, but you don't have to be so loud about
yeah. Everybody who watches sports always wants a good guy and a bad guy.
it.
There's
It's human
always
nature.
a LeBron Kobe. There's always a Kobe MJ. There's always an MJ Shaq Kobe. You mentioned Magic and Bird. You know, you can go down the history of the NBA, but there's in every sport. McGuire Sosa. Oh, by the way, neither won an MVP. That was Barry Bonds. Guess what happened in the W last year? You had Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, but neither won the MVP or neither won the title. You
Neither one
know,
will playoff
like
for him.
it's one of those things where you see it every time. You see it in soccer. You see Messi, Ronaldo. You see Ronaldinho. You see Beckham. You see all these players historically. Ronaldo, like original R9. Like you have historically always put one player up against another, and in reality, you can't do that in basketball more so than every other sport because so many players in basketball are very different. You should never put a center up against a forward. You should never put a forward up against a guard. You should never put a shooting guard up against a point guard because those two are supposed to do two different things. Maybe you could do a small forward, power forward, but again, supposed to do two different things.
Supposed
Like,
to.
yeah, supposed to. But like in general, you should never try to compare these players who play completely different positions in completely different styles. Angel Reese has always been a rebounder. She's always been a putback artist, especially the offensive side. She loves getting offensive rebounds. I mean, she is one of the most talented offensive rebounders I've ever seen, men or women. And just, I don't care if she's getting her own rebounds. I'll joke about it because it's funny to see on TV because it's a professional sport and it's something you see in high school. But she's that dominant, she can do that, which should tell you a lot about how she plays in basketball, which is why I hate the disrespect. And I said this before. When I talk Caitlin Clark, you have to give Angel Reese her roses as well. Just like every time you talk Angel Reese, you have to give Caitlin Clark her roses because both are going to be put up against each other constantly. And it's something we just have to deal with. We just can't make it into something more than basketball. And right now, everything seems to be putting it to more than basketball in the media. And that's the frustrating part of all of this is in the game, man, yeah, it was a 40-point blowout, but I watched every minute of it.
So you can say something about either individual player without it having beyond basketball ramifications too. You could say, "Wow, she stinks because she shoots 30% in all of." Okay, cool. You say Caitlin Clark sucks because she jacks up threes and she doesn't defend or whatever. Okay, that's basketball related stuff. Or, oh, I hate her, she's whiny, or I hate her, she's arrogant. Whatever you might want to say about them, that doesn't have to go beyond that. It's the
Yeah.
same thing. Like people hate people in sports. Like I guarantee Patriots fans despise Peyton Manning and all of his foreheads. Just like I know Colts fans hate Tom Brady and his clearly medically enhanced face over the years because that transformation doesn't occur in nature. So on and so forth. The goal is to keep it cordial. Unfortunately, not everybody does. We get it. And I think the problem is the people with the loudest voice need to find a way to keep it as close to the game as they can because it's going to be a detriment to the game in the long run. A game that is finally starting to get its legs and now it's like it's shooting itself in the foot. Like, no, we don't want to. Like, this should be about propelling the game forward, not finding ways to plateau it. Because at the end of the day, the
Yeah.
game's it's still on the rise, but it's not there yet. It's got a long ways to go. We're not going to get into the numbers and being basically subsidized by the NBA. We won't go dive into that. Everyone can find out all that stuff.
It's
Let it
public
grow.
knowledge.
Just let it grow. Like, give it a
Yeah.
chance at this point. Don't shoot it in the foot.
You know, the last thing I'll say about this and is this. The outside stuff, there's a time and place for all of that, but it should never take away from the athletes.
When
And
that stuff is prevalent, that's when it should be brought to the forefront. In this
that's
situation where it makes no sense, like you said.
this is the problem that we're having is this is taking away from what Angel Reese does and taking away from what Caitlin Clark does. And we talked about this last year. Just keep that in mind anytime anybody has this conversation because you can't take away from the athletes. And right now, former athletes are taking away from current potential superstars. And that's an embarrassment to alumni of any pro sport.
What I will add to that to round it out too is if there was issues with fans, because I know there is a lot of talk about
Oh,
certain fans of
deal with that.
certain players are the issue. Like it's not even her, it's her fans, blah blah. We joked about this with the LeBron fans growing up, the Steph fans, et cetera, et cetera. Like they're fine as their fans that I hate, so on and so forth. The joke about Cowboys fans, Yankees fans, Lakers fans,
It's true.
etc. That's one thing. And any fan who says anything out of line, we already talked about. Send them to the gulag. Send them whatever you got to do with them. What they're like, that's their job. Take care of that. Fully understand. No one supports that. But tying everything, you can't tie that to the player. It's not her fault for existing. It's the same way, in theory, like Dak Prescott shouldn't be blamed for Cowboys fans. Dak should be blamed for throwing bad interceptions in playoff games, which he is. You can't blame LeBron for his fans being kind of obnoxious. You could blame LeBron for, flailing all over the place and shooting weirdly bad from the free throw line at later in his career compared to 80% in Miami, then after that downhill, so on and so forth. You could blame Shaq's fans for being obnoxious, but you could blame Shaq for his free throws. The fact that at 30 years old, he's still shooting awkwardly with one hand like that with all that money, but you can't blame him for his fans. So that's kind of that's where I'll draw the line there. But we've dove in this one plenty of times. We've covered all different angles of it. Let us know down below what you all think about this conversation. If you're just ready to move on and watch some basketball too.
Oh, by the way, this is just one thing with Angel. Just last thing. Who is her shooting coach? Because I have questions for you, sir. How did you ruin her shot from college to the pros?
Is this like a Mikal Fultz situation?
It feels like it, man. I don't know how she was easily able to shoot close to 60, 70% in college, and now in the pros, she's like not able to hit a layup sometimes. It's like, what are we doing?
The one thing she gets credit for that she deserves is offensive rebounding is about hustling, and no one hustles quite like her, so that needs to be commended. But one thing that's going to help is in crunch time, we need an extra basket. That offensive rebounding will come in handy. So that's